And whoever did the minutes last time I'd been doing them, thank you to the person who did the minutes when I wasn't here.
I take no credit.
Okay.
Okay, we are recording and streaming. I'll call to order this meeting of the Joint Policy Committee for Easton, Reading, and Region 9 at 9:11 a.m. on September 11th, 2020. In attendance, we have all members of the Joint Policy Committee. Fantastic. Let's start first item as public comment. No members of the public being present. We'll move on to member comment. Any comments? Okay, moving on to agenda item 1, the continuation of the review.
Approval of minutes.
Oh,
Yeah, do we
sorry.
pass approval minutes? Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Yes, from Chris, and a second.
Has to be Gwen. I wasn't here.
You, Gwen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One
Very
abstention.
3-0-1.
Very good. All right, moving on to agenda item review and discussion of the 3000 series. So continued review of the 3000 series. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share the right screen somewhere here. There we go. All right, so we stopped here. This was page 18 on August 14th, which I believe is the last time that we connected on this. We, sort of were highlighting various items, and I think we settled on this language here, the highlighted language, for sort of further discussion in our next meeting. So I think this is where we left. So this is, and I think this is a fairly thorny subject because we know that we've all sort of looked at this language fairly recently and, sort of have different approaches. And I think reconciling that language was something that we thought would be worth doing.
Can you make your screen bigger, John?
I can. It wouldn't be a policy committee meeting without that.
Can we start adding that to the agenda?
Yeah.
Agenda item 4A, make your screen bigger.
That's right. Good.
Thank you.
So I think on this one, there's a question about the sort of what the board needs to approve. And I think that's where we need the reconciliation. Here, we're talking about instead of getting a sort of as they come in report from the superintendent, that we get some kind of annual report. So I think that's where we settled. Is anyone's recollection of that issue different than mine?
No, I think we were trying to make sure that we were advised, but we weren't trying to create a giant burden.
Right.
And there's no bylaw problem with this in any way. There's no requirement for monetary receipts to be like reported within 30 days or anything like that, right?
I don't think so. And to the extent that monetary receipts are reported, they would show up in the budget object summary, I would think.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna move along then. All right. So we have some comments. Ooh. My system is being a little bit sluggish. There we go. Okay. So we actually have a number of comments that are, I'm sorry, this is being very sluggish. I'm going to close down some windows here. See if I can speed things up. Okay. All right, good. So on page 19, we're looking at some language. This is back from February that we did this original review. And I think there, sort of Chris, you had checked in and on this on the 14th of August, asking region only, saying this is only for the high school. Is that the intent of the comment?
Yeah, in the sense of investment of funds, to the extent that the local school districts don't really control the funds. They're controlled by the town treasurer, who then dispenses them on a bi-weekly or monthly basis. There's nothing really to invest. my understanding, and I might be wrong about this too, is that the region has a little bit more discretion and control of funds on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis.
Okay.
But Maureen and Gwen would know better than I do.
I'm not sure that we have precise knowledge, or certainly I don't, about what
Yeah.
they might invest outside. So I guess we need to ask Scott or his replacement.
Okay.
So
I mean, it's permissive, and I wonder if looking at 7-399 is probably a good idea. As I'm looking at it again with fresh eyes, I'm wondering if this is to permit money that has been allocated by the taxpayers for the use in education to be invested, as opposed to being completely encumbered and sequestered by the town, so that the town treasurer, in his or her discretion, may continue to invest. I'm just trying to think of why this exists, and that seems to be a
Yeah.
possibility.
well, clearly, I suppose it requires a little bit more investigation, certainly on my part, because I don't know why it exists nor how it functions. So, and it requires, I guess, a little bit more investigation before we can comment.
So let's take this guy and
Yeah, Connecticut Journal Statute 7-399 was repealed
Oh,
in 1991.
oh boy.
Just, according to a very quick search
Okay,
here.
with no replacement.
No replacement. I mean, it's an ETSEC reference here, so it goes on. And 7-400 talks about the investment of funds. The treasurer of a municipality, upon approval of the budget-making authority of any town, of any regional school district, of any district, and any other municipal corporation, is authorized to issue bonds, notes, or other obligations.
This must apply to municipalities and districts that are much larger than us. Cities, basically. Not towns.
okay. All right. So we'll leave that one in the additional research to be done. Connect with.
Yeah, throughout this chapter of the general statutes, it refers almost exclusively to regional boards.
Okay. I will ask, but I think that this is something that, well, I'm guessing that I'm going to hear. I don't know about that.
But I mean, to the extent that it is a permissive policy, I'm sort of less concerned.
I understand that, but it all permissive policies give rise to somebody reading the policy book and saying, why don't you do this?
Oh, 100%.
It may be permissive, but this is the better practice. What have you
Right.
done in the past? What are you doing now?
Right. Why are you gambling with my money?
Didn't the money that you haven't expended that's been allocated to you be appropriately,
Right.
Whatever.
Why didn't we collect 1% interest over the course of the year? And,
yes, 0.444444%. Why didn't you put it in a CD?
Okay.
I will certainly be the one, if you want, to ask Scott or his designate what's done historically and report back,
Okay.
because I have no institutional knowledge, and I don't think any's going to be found, but we'll ask.
Yep. Okay. So at this point, we're about 15 seconds from 9:20. I think we'll just take a 1 minute pause for a moment of silence for September 11th remembrance. Okay. right, thank you. Okay, so Maureen will connect with Scott to do some research on this item. Do we need to keep the reference to the region only question?
I think it's implied in Maureen connecting with Scott.
Yep. Okay. And I think that there's sort of additional questions here about the capital and non-recurring expenses.
Right, 'cause I think this also gets back into region only because
Yep.
the local board doesn't have the authority to create these funds
Right.
on their own.
Right. I'm gonna just.
Which I guess is what I wrote a couple months ago.
Yep. Okay, good. And moving on. Okay, a question of, do we have one? So by a majority vote of its member may create a reserve fund for accrued
Well,
liability.
now I know, we probably do.
Okay.
I've obviously been educated on that point since
Okay.
I wrote that comment. Ad nauseum.
From a vendor. Right. The question is, no board member or employee shall directly or indirectly solicit any gift or accept or receive any gift having a value of $25 or more, whether in the form of money or services, loan, travel, entertainment, hospitality, thing, or promise of any form.
I don't know
So-
about you guys. I spend a lot of time fending off lavish gifts from members of the people are always offering me.
Yeah.
The slings and arrows of those lavish gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
People love me so much.
All the free stuff I've turned down. It's just like the list could take seconds to repeat.
Yeah.
Can you go to the top of the policy.
Yep.
I think it was about, it might have been about vendors, which is why
Yeah. And I'm killing some of my other Chrome windows to see if that makes any difference. Relations with vendors. That's right.
Right.
This is also a very interesting title.
Yeah.
Relationships, let's say, with vendors. I'm just going to say relationships with vendors.
I think you should do that.
Platonic relationship with vendors.
Yeah.
Vendor engagement.
Vendor engagement. That's much better. There's about a 3-second delay in everything I'm typing, which is fun. Okay, good. So we will say that yes, vendor, because it's in that section.
We should probably add from vendor because in the conflicts type, it talks about from vendor.
Okay. Good. Business and non-instructional, it's so laggy, sorry. Business and non-instructional operations. Huh.
Hmm.
The lowest bid and the lowest price for goods and services shall be sought and accepted. Yeah, that's
Historically, has
that's
that been the
strange.
practice? I don't think so.
right.
We're not endeavoring to make local purchases whenever possible.
Right.
And this seems like more restrictive than maybe is necessary.
Right.
And when I said it wasn't based on statute because when you scroll down, there's no authority listed. On
Yep.
this one.
Delete.
Yeah.
I would
I like
certainly
local
favor
businesses
deleting.
too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Purchasing procedures.
I would make this a designee because
Yes.
not interested in changing job titles.
Or do we say superintendent or designee, or the superintendent's designee?
Or designee.
Or
I mean,
designee.
Okay.
Or his, her designee, or whatever.
Directed by the superintendent or.
Right, so the duties of purchasing for the Board of Education shall be directed by the superintendent or his or her designee.
We don't need the of schools.
Yeah, the whole sentence structure kind of gets goofy now.
We just take this out, right?
yep.
And now we're good.
I like that comment, Chris. Strike as weird. Probably the best reason to strike anything is policy. Strike it
Well,
because it's
Can we get rid of the
weird.
business manager still too?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, my comments get more colloquial as
The
the hour
longer you go on.
passes. And do we want to address Maureen's comment about annual spending, budget spending plan? I think annual budget is sufficient. I don't want to create a new term of art by accident and
I don't
imply
know.
that we have a particular plan for spending the budget.
Yep. So laggy. Mhm. Shall not be the responsibility of the board. I also have a question, Chris. What does that mean?
I think it's basically saying that if somebody violates this process, the board doesn't have to pay. So if the business manager contracted with somebody without following this process, the business manager is responsible for paying for the contract, or something equally goofy, which if that's what it's trying to say, it should say much more directly.
Yeah.
And I doubt
not
that
even
that
sure
would
that's
be, I
enforceable.
mean, we would not be individually responsible, certainly, but collectively,
Right.
as they're an agent. I suppose we
Right,
wouldn't
this
be
is all
responsible
weird.
unless it was ratified, but implicitly, when we take a look at these budget object summaries every month, we'd be ratifying the expenditures. So
I think they're using the.
Yep.
I kind of
Go
think they're using the term Board of Education here to mean the district,
Mhm.
because if you look at the first paragraph, this whole policy talks about Board of Education as if it's saying, Easton Public Schools.
Mhm.
And this is another issue where the fact that these policies are cobbled together from different other places,
Yep.
there's a lack of uniformity in how they're referring to things like the district.
The only kind of example I can think of is when teachers from time to time make purchases and don't get prior approval, with the hope that then ultimately they're going to get reimbursed, and honestly the Board of Education would bear responsibility for paying for things. But this is saying that it's not the responsibility of the boards if purchases are made out of the sort of the regular plan. But and that's the only example I can think of. I can't think of how we would make a major purchase without going through the typical procedures.
And frankly, I think the remedy for somebody making a purchase outside of the normal procedures is a human resources disciplinary action, not, well, the board's not paying for it because I don't think that's going to hold water. Like,
Right.
Mrs. Smith, the kindergarten teacher who ordered,
and
700 tables, isn't going to be writing a check for the tables.
yeah, I mean, the examples are more like I was at the dollar store, and
Right.
so
Right. I mean, what it's trying to say then maybe is only purchases made through this process shall be eligible for reimbursement. But we don't even want to create a reimbursement system through this
I don't,
policy.
yeah, I don't think you want to do that. I mean, because we discourage it. Sometimes we do it, but it's not something we encourage.
We're covered here in the superintendent of schools shall develop regulations and procedures for the purchasing programs of the school system, et cetera, et cetera. So we're saying that there's going to be a program that the superintendent's going to define what that, what the process is, and that the process should be followed.
Right, and the process can only be followed if the superintendent approves an exception.
Yeah.
So,
Could we put a period right there and be done with the rest of this this sentence?
I mean, do we need the paragraph at all?
Do we have the sort of the exceptions from the superintendent in this one? Or are we saying
if the superintendent is developing regulations and procedures, in theory, one of the regulations could be, you know, do this except when this.
Sure. Yep. Okay, good. Buy the proper product for the purpose required, have the product available when needed, buy the proper amount of the product. Okay, can we
Pay
please
the proper price?
Can we not? Can we kill this whole
I
section?
think we can strike it as weird.
Thank you. Yeah. You.
Full of sound and fury and saying nothing.
Yeah. Business manager shall be familiar with and perform all purchasing activities within.
So this is superintendent or designee again.
Yep.
But do we even need this language?
I don't see why.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, I think this whole policy is 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, that sounds like a personnel thing. Obviously, we're going to hire someone who.
Right. Specifications governing materials are a joint responsibility of the educational and business type. Okay. Good.
Again, the text seems to be getting smaller, John.
I didn't do it. Somebody
Somebody else is responsible, I know, but it's painfully small now.
Somebody else must have taken it down a notch. I'm gonna go larger here.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, yay, team.
Here, I'm gonna rearrange this so we can see the comments clearly. There we go. It's refreshing. Here we go.
Wow, the internet is very slow this morning.
Yeah, I mean,
all those
around
cohort
town.
A kids who are
That's
all logged
right.
on.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Actually, last night was really slow in my house too.
Yeah.
I tried to get on to do some work around 11 p.m. and it was just not moving. And I thought, oh my.
It's been very iffy all around town, different people, you know.
I was reading that Reading Ridge had an outage this morning, which is not helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So Chris, you made comments about should also permit the board to waive requirement for contract.
On the bid, right. The board has acted in the past to formally waive the bid requirement with sort of good cause shown, which is often, this is the only person who can do this, or this is the person who's always done it for us, and it would cost more in any possible circumstance. So, I mean, here it says in an emergency, the requirement to be waived by the superintendent. But I think that the board should be able to in theory, the board can waive any policy.
Right.
By taking action too. So
do we want to say, we just want to tack something on here? So we're still saying in an emergency situation, the superintendent has these powers, but then we can also say that the board may.
I mean, you might even say that the board by like a 2/3 majority or something may waive the 3 bid requirement. I think that creates that's helpful from a governance perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bare majority that's waiving the 3 bid requirement.
And now we have to deal with the next sentence. The lowest possible Lowest responsible qualified contractor, because we just deleted the policy saying lowest price governs.
Right.
Yep.
What's the language that we use for that? It's like the lowest or most reasonable, or there's a that we've had. At my 11 o'clock meeting, somebody will know.
And also, John, as a point of sort of order, if we can get notify the board chair instead of the chairman.
Yeah.
Does this cover when we're using the Connecticut system where we're choosing a vendor? And I'm not recalling the name of it, but it often happens with facility purchases where we don't go through a competitive bid process because the vendor is chosen from the bidders within the Connecticut system. Scott would know the name,
Like
but
they've been
somehow that
pre-vetted.
should cover us, because in those cases we don't go through the process.
Right. And we definitely don't have a policy of always taking the lowest bid, because sometimes we don't want that.
Unless it says qualified.
Right.
That
Is
I mean, you can say that the district shall endeavor to award contracts to the lowest qualified contractor, which would
Sure.
be less binding.
Yes.
But before jumping into that, we can take out the parenthetical in the first paragraph. It's a drafting note.
The board will endeavor to award all contracts and open market orders to the lowest responsible qualified. Is that right?
The board shall endeavor to award something like that. Yeah.
I wrote a note to Scott about the other, and we'll see what he says.
I would take out everything after the comma, because the factors in 3320 were just we like local vendors.
Yep.
Possible 3320 used to say more than that.
Yeah. When bidding procedures are used, bids shall be advertised in the area newspaper. One day.
Yeah, we do
Is
that actually. I mean, we
Yeah.
do.
And okay.
There
We
is, yeah,
post-
there's definitely a,
I mean, this is currently the process we follow.
Is there a statutory requirement on newspapers?
Right.
You scroll down to the site and try to pull it.
Oh, hold on. We have requirements for competitive bidding.
Oh, Public Act. Look at that.
Yeah.
And 1371. So 1371 changed the amount. And 17.2, section 161. Yikes. Looks like the implementer bill. A local board of education, after going out to bid for services, shall consult with the legislative body of the municipality if such municipality provides for the use of goods and services, and if the equivalent amount of goods and services provided by such municipality or through the municipal contract for a lower price than the lowest qualified bid submitted, such board shall consider a cooperative agreement with such municipality for provision of such good or service. For the purpose of this section, good or service includes, but is not limited to, portable classrooms, etc.
It seems like this was confused that the interpretation within this document was you're going to buy local, not you're going to buy local from local municipalities, right? That seems to cover municipalities who are offering the services, correct?
Right. The statute basically says, like, if we go out to bid for lawn services,
Right.
and our bids come back at $5,000, $6,000, and $7,000,
Yep.
and then we go to the town and say, "What do you contract for?" And they
Right.
say, "We contract at $4,000."
Right.
We have to consider using their contractor,
Right.
at a cooperative basis,
Right.
which makes all the sense in the world,
Sure.
but is now statutorily required.
Right. But that's not the same thing as buying local,
Buy local.
as a rule. Right.
No, because the town's vendor could be from
Right.
Saskatchewan.
Exactly. Okay. So does that mean,
And then it's 7-148V.
yep,
I'm looking for any reference to things
The
being required to
newspaper.
be in the newspaper.
Right. right.
Notwithstanding any provision here too, by ordinance, a municipality may establish requirements for competitive bidding. Such ordinance may provide that except as otherwise required, sealed bidding. Notwithstanding anything in the general statutes or special act, municipality may purchase equipment or goods and services. Publication of a referendum needs to be in the newspaper. Public hearing on the sale of municipal property needs to be in the newspaper, but bids don't need to be in the newspaper by statute. None of the statutory references bring me to you need to put your bidding in the newspaper.
And the bids submitted in sealed envelopes?
Let's see. I think the language was 148V. A municipality may by ordinance establish requirements for bidding. Such ordinance may provide that sealed bidding shall not be required for contracts having a value of less than or equal to the amount established in the ordinance, which amount shall be no greater than $25,000. So it sounds like they have to be sealed unless there's an ordinance that lets them not be.
And it's the municipality who makes that ordinance.
Mhm.
And so if Easton and or Reading's rules say sealed bidding process, or say got to put it into the newspaper, or say got to offer it to local folks, could that actually affect all of our policy here?
Right. I mean, should the policy say that the board will comply with municipal ordinances with respect to competitive bidding?
Yep.
And just leave it at that? And
Yep.
that allows us to have a uniform policy?
Right.
I
But
agree.
what does the region do if Easton and Reading have different sealed bid policies?
Well, the region still would have to be, they're still a board of education. They would still have to be compliant with this rule by
But
statute.
if the two policies are in conflict, John, which one do you
Right.
follow?
No,
The more restrictive one?
well, no.
And I think in
you
order to
mean
answer this,
Easton
we
and
got to
Reading.
figure out whether or
Oh.
not they are, right?
Yeah.
John just caught up.
What a silly structure that is.
Who
We
would
should
do
do
such a
something
thing?
Out
about
if they
that.
do conflict, right? So isn't this an area for further research, folks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the conflict.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are the current, I mean, that only solves for the present. There's nothing stopping one town from changing the ordinance tomorrow because they think in a silo.
All we can ever do in our tasks is solve for the present.
So could we add to this second paragraph here, the board shall comply with municipal sort
Shall
of
observe
ordinance.
all municipal ordinances with respect to competitive bidding.
all local ordinances.
With respect to competitive bidding or something.
Trying to remember which
With
letters.
respect to the competitive bidding process.
I can't remember which letters I've typed because it's happening now 10 seconds after I've typed the letter. Come on. The bidding process and we'll endeavor to award contracts in all open market orders. So let's see. Fine. I know it's a Frankenstein sentence. I don't care much.
And for what it's worth,
yep.
Formally in the town of Reading, there is no competitive bid ordinance.
Okay.
I understand that there is an operating policy that people follow, but there's a reasonable possibility that that is not sufficient under the statute because it's not an ordinance.
Yep. Okay.
But I'm not going to, that's a whole different conversation for a different day.
Yep. Okay, which means then that we can delete this content. Do we agree with that?
The last thing we want to do is create another conflicting process or
right.
process that risks conflicting.
Right, and in any minute, Easton or Reading could approve an ordinance, and then
that changes the playing field.
That's right. And that's an area that we haven't had to think about as we've been thinking about the regular maintenance of these policies. It would be nice if we can just, punt on that. School district reserves the right to reject any or all bids and to accept that bid which appears to be in the best interest of the town and city. Do we want to keep that?
Do we want a regulation on this in which we use this language and we put this in a regulation? Because I do think it is directive and it's been the process that's been used before. And
yep.
I'm thinking this needs to be migrated.
Yep.
I like that. So we can take.
Right. The policy is that competitive bidding shall be dictated by the municipality's policy. The regulation is how we carry that out.
There's a line here that says the above requirement regarding consulting with the town's legislative body is not applicable to regional school boards.
Right. That is the Public Act from 2017 language that only applies to local school boards.
Okay.
I think if you incorporate what you deleted as well as the rest of this language in a reg, we would be in a better place.
Yep, agreed. Let's so I didn't delete those paragraphs, so they're still there. And then I
just dumped that statutory language in the chat if anybody's curious.
Okay.
You might incorporate this because it shall consult with the legislative body. You might incorporate this in a regulation too, Chris.
Yeah, the shall consult is the statutory dictate.
Yeah.
Wow. It seems to be getting worse and worse.
Is this sort of contra to you being able to do this well, John? I mean, it does seem to be getting slower and slower.
Yeah, I don't know I think it's just the internet is kind of a disaster right now everywhere.
Optima may be slowing speeds again. I think it's time for a concerted effort to have some conversations with Optimum providers. I will say that. I mean, storm notwithstanding, it's been a first grade disaster. So.
Yeah. Right. And the fact that there's no other option for broadband,
right.
How is this working? This is not.
You're captive.
Yeah.
I mean, off topic, I was on the phone trying to increase my internet speed here at my house with Optimum for a full 55 minutes.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Take my money. And it took an hour.
Right.
I upgraded to the highest speed possible, got the new equipment, installed it, ran my tests, it's slower than it was before. Yay!
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, all right.
I feel like there's an
President, 5
invisible
minutes.
genie
Yes,
saying, no, 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 blame you for asking.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a hard stop at 10. Do we want to? We actually have some other stuff here that is moving to regs. Do we want to talk about where we want to sort of what we want to make progress on? So the next time we meet, which I think I saw.
I have a problem on the 18th.
Right.
I cannot be here in the morning. I have.
Okay. Let's look at the calendar. So the 25th.
All good.
That's still
Okay.
fine.
And do we want to try? We are on page 25 right now. I think it would be useful for each of us to review, I think the sort of the notes that we see. So page 25 through, what were we saying? 60 pages at a time?
Yep.
Okay. So if possible, that the next time we meet, we're talking about basically page 25 to 85.
And do we expect or want to expect to circle back on the Title IX stuff in 2 weeks?
I think that we should have answers back from Rich at this point on that language. Okay, so pages 25 to 85 for the 25th, no meeting on the 18th, and then looping back on the Title IX questions. Good.
And just to clarify, John, you had sent an additional note to Rich. It's someone else at Shipman and Goodwin that handles
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Yep,
Gwen.
my mistake. Sorry,
Yeah.
Rich just is Shipman and Goodman to me, so I
Yeah,
need-
yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure I didn't need to follow up additionally because I know I
Nope.
have the, okay.
Thank you. Okay. Good. So I don't think there's anything for agenda item B to sort of go into those yet because we're still waiting for that feedback. And so that takes us to public comment. There's no public.
There's one public, isn't there?
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
You're right.
Before we adjourn, John, at some point, can you just reshare this folder with me so that I can do my homework appropriately for our next?
Absolutely. So it should be all in a folder called Policy Updates Collection Docs for
Okay.
comments. And there's a shortcut to it. I think this document is actually Sharon's document, but I just created a shortcut in that. The larger one is Policy Committee Documents. And
I'll be able to find it then.
I'm going to make sure that you're in that already. Yes, you're in that. Yep.
And we have JMORRELE here.
Mhm. Going once on public comment. Okay. Member comment?
Something that's popped in the chat. Hang on.
No comment.
Jasmine, no comments. Okay.
All right. Member comment? No. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We're adjourned at 9:54 a.m. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good weekend.
That was
Thank you. You too.